Shabbat Shalom. This week, we begin the Torah once again. Once again, we read the Genesis story. Once again, we consider the vastness of the primordial soup, the power of God, and the profoundness of an unfolding creative process. All great literary works, amongst which the Torah, and especially the book of Genesis, Sefer Bereshit, should certainly be counted, if not at the top of the list. All great literary works establish themselves through a tremendous introduction. It was the best of times. Dickens, A Tale of Two Cities. Two households, both alike in dignity, in fair Verona, where we lay our scene. Very good. Brett is the only one who passes sophomore English. Shakespeare, Romeo and Juliet. Breshit bara Elohim. Very good. You passed religious school, fourth grade. Very good. Sefer Breshit, the book of Genesis. In the beginning. And yet this week, as I studied the Mefarshim, the rabbinic commentators through the ages, they seem to pick up on a single point of this famous introduction, namely, in the beginning of what? For instance, the famous commentator Rashi from 11th century France, he begins his first comment in Genesis by quoting Rabbi Yitzchak. Was it not enough to begin the Torah, this month is for you, which is the first commandment the Jewish people receives in Exodus chapter 12? Rashi is asking a fundamental question. What is the purpose of all of these stories in the book of Genesis? Isn't the Torah simply a vehicle to inform us of mitzvot, commandments, for us, the Jewish people, to fulfill God's will? In the beginning seems not to be a suitable introduction to a book of law. And then I read Rabbi Ovadia ben Yaakov Sforno, usually referred to simply as Sforno, who lived in Italy in the 16th century. Sforno's first comment on Genesis regarding the word Bereshit, or in the beginning, he explains that this marks the beginning of time. This is the first moment without any moment before. Meaning to say, there was no time before the beginning. The Torah seems to intuitively understand the power of placing the narrative on a timeline. While other stories can begin once upon a time, the Torah begins once upon the time. And as I began to comprehend this point this week, I began to understand that if there is one element of our lives that the Jewish tradition tries to legislate more than any other, it's our time. Shabbat, Rosh Chodesh, the holidays, prayer services, adolescence, the process of death and mourning. All of these are expressed in nature and time, and the Jewish tradition tries to celebrate them and legislate them by marking their times. In the beginning, or rather from the beginning, the Torah wants to set out a timeline for the world, for us to know that we fit someplace on this timeline. Lest we misunderstand our place, the world existed long before we were born and will exist long after we're here. From the beginning of time, we had ancestors who spent their lives trying to impact the world for the better. Adam and Eve, Abraham and Sarah, Moses and Miriam. And long after God created this timeline, after God redeemed us out of slavery, the very first commandment given to Moses and the Jewish people is the one Rashi references in Exodus 12 about our time. To be free is to be in charge of our own time, but that kind of freedom is not enough of a goal for the Torah. We are charged to live lives of meaning, to spend our time in a worthwhile way. The genius of the Jewish tradition isn't just that our time is divided for us, but rather the tradition shapes our time to create meaning. After a long work week, Shabbat is a time for community, friends, and family. We share and celebrate our family narrative together at predictable times each year. And that's why it always makes me laugh whenever we say that the holidays came early or came late this year, because we can all Google Rosh Hashanah 2028 in 10 years. I know because I tried this week. And we can find out the day and date in 2028 of when the holidays will be. But I can assure you that in late summer, early fall of 2028, we will all still complain nonetheless that the holidays have come early or late. How shocking it is. This attention to time, this planning of our calendar, this removes that burden from us and allows us to live our lives looking for meaning. From the beginning, the Torah wants us to not look for historical detail, as in where was Noah born or how tall was Sarah. But rather, from the beginning, the Torah wants us to learn lessons and values, significance, and meaning. Some of the stories in Genesis are long, and some are very short. And we treat them all as significant, because that's what the Torah wants from our lives, significance. None of us have all the time in the world. So when we spend time with friends or family, we have to make it matter. When we come to synagogue, it should be impactful. When we give time to organizations, we should see that effort translate into help, into change, into influence. The Jewish tradition wants us to live lives of meaning so that we can reach milestones and stand together and recite the famous blessing in unison, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe. Shehechianu v'kiyamanu v'higianu lazman hazeh, who has granted us life and sustained us and enabled us to reach this point in time. May we merit to recite that blessing often in our lives. And let us all say, Amen.